Councillors, officers and members of the public, welcome to the 15th of April special council meeting. We'll start off with the opening of the prayer on Jared Bingham. Councillor Jared Bingham.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Almighty God, be with us as we work for the people of the Shire of Mirrabul. Grant us wisdom that we may care for the Shire's true stewards of your creation. May we be aware of the great responsibilities placed upon us. Help us to be just in all our dealings, and may our work prosper for the good of all. Amen.
Thank you, Councillor Bingham. I acknowledge the traditional owners of the land which we're meeting. I pay my respect to elders past and present and the Aboriginal elders of other communities who may be here today. All councillors are present. Councillor Ward is online. There's no apologies. There's no disclosure of conflicts of interest. No presentations, deputations. Moving along to 7.1, investigation of a municipal charge. Councillors, are there any questions? No questions. Councillor Ward? You have a question, Councillor Ward?
I'm just happy to move the recommendation, Mr Mayor.
Do we have a second? Councillor Freeman. Anyone opposed? Councillor Sullivan. We'll start off with Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I suppose it's a privilege to be an elected councillor, but it does come with difficult decisions. But at the end of the day, I suppose, as one of my colleagues reminds us, we're elected for the community and we are elected to represent the ratepayers, and they're our masters. And the survey results that have gone out made it very clear, overwhelmingly clear, that they're against a municipal levy. I understand the intent of the municipal levy. Unfortunately, what it does do though is that the survey results and the information provided by the ratepayers does come back loud and clear. The biggest concern was it has a disproportionate impact on low-value residential properties, pensioners and retirees, and single-income households and first-home buyers. Rising interest rates, increased energy insurance costs, increased state government costs, all make it very, very difficult, cost of living crisis. So in effect, what we're doing is we have around 15,000 rateable properties, which translate to the over approximately 38,000 residents, and we're asking them to pay an additional $95 per annum if we go ahead with the municipal levy, which I think is unfair. So on that basis, I would like to support the recommendation. The survey results came back loud and clear that 75% were against the municipal levy, 30% were for, and 12% were undecided or needed more information. So 3/4 of the respondents to the survey were against the municipal levy. So with that in mind, I'd like to endorse the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ward. Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I oppose this particular motion, which is in a couple of parts, particularly item 3. I think there's been a significant amount of misinformation about this particular matter, and I would suggest that the majority of ratepayer objectors believe that the municipal charge is an addition on top of their rates, which is not so. Undoubtedly, there were a good number of responses, 234 people, and 206 actually formal submissions out of a shire of 41,000. I mean, based on the responses on the numbers that have come in, you'd say that that was significant, but out of 41,000 people, which is the population of the shire, it really is about 0.005%. So I suppose it's sort of, I'd say the majority, the overwhelming majority, were either supportive or ambivalent about the whole matter, near the for or against. So, and I think there were 6 key points that were supplied in our budget paper: general opposition, equity and ability to pay, cost of living and financial hardship, perceived imbalance between residential and non-residential ratepayers, service levels and value for money, I think some of those objections actually relate more to perhaps council activity more so than the matter at hand. Just some facts about this. A municipal charge does not generate any additional revenue for council. The total rate of the council is capped by the state government, revenue of the council rather. This coming year it is 2.75%. That is to say, based on the total rate revenue for last year, council's income from rates will only be 2.75% of last year's rate income, no more. The municipal charge, how it works, it's a fixed component of the rates notice, with the balance of the rates based on property values. I find it interesting when they talk about equity and ability to pay. When I just make the point that we have flat taxes in Moorabool Shire now. All rate notice with a residential dwelling, the garbage and recycle charge in 24-25 was $256 per tenement, regardless of how much waste or how little you generate. You all pay the same. Is that fair? So I put that point. Is that fair? Low income earners and pensioners still pay that same amount, $256 per assessment, regardless. In addition to the all rateable properties, there's a waste service charge in 24-25 of $118 per property. Again, a flat tax, which is payable by the low pensioners and low income earners alike, as opposed to those that may be in a better financial position. All up, ratepayers with the residents pay $375 as a flat tax, not including the state government landfill levy of $65 per property, which is a state government charge and not one that belongs to council. Many other councillors, particularly the rural or peri-urban councils, employ a municipal charge. It is part of the suite of revenue streams that progressive councils employ to really ease the rate burden. It eases the rate burden. Currently, the rates are based on the capital improved value of the property, CIV, with annual valuations being carried out every 12 months by the Valuer General on behalf of the state government. So what we see each year is an annual revaluation at which there can be significant swings in the valuation, property valuations across the Shire. I've seen it in the past, and with these significant uplifts, the valuations does not create greater income for councils. It merely distributes the rate burden. Council doesn't get, if there's a significant uplift in valuations, council doesn't get anything out of that from rates because of the rating is structured separately. With a portion of the rate, this is the nub of it all, with a portion of the rate income from council being fixed by the municipal charge, the swings that can occur with annual valuations are dampened. So you don't have the violent fluctuations which we've seen in my time of council. I've seen them in the rural areas, I've seen them in the urban areas, I've seen them in the townships, because it changes significantly. And I think we have to have that. So the question we need to ask ourselves, councillors, do we wish to add another tool to our revenue capacity, or remain in the past where with annual valuations there are winners and losers every year? Because that's what it comes down to. In a fast-growing and diverse council like Moorabool, we need flexibility, and the municipal charge does provide that flexibility. A municipal charge will in the longer term assist those who are the most vulnerable by protecting them from the extremes of extreme valuation and fluctuations. And I think that's important, because it's all very well to sort of say, be popular and say, we don't support this, but to be realistic in a council and take a longer term vision of the council, I see this as a tool which we should employ and we must employ. Because if we don't, we're selling ourselves short, and ultimately our ratepayers. So councillors, if this motion were to fail, I would flag an alternate motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Freeman.
Mayor, I support the council officer's recommendation. Let's be clear about what this proposal actually does. It shifts the rate burden from higher value properties onto lower value homes, from those with greater capacity to pay to those with less. We can call it revenue neutral, but for many households across Mirrabul, it means one simple thing: they will pay more. And they will be the people least able to afford it. Pensioners, first home buyers, working families already under pressure from rising mortgages, rent, food and energy costs. This is not fairness, this is cost shifting, and it cuts directly against the principle that rates should reflect capacity to pay. Our community understands that, and they've made their position very clear. Over 200 submissions, strong engagement across the Shire and a consistent message. This is not supported and it is not fair. So the question for us tonight is whether we actually listen. Because if this passes, some of our most vulnerable residents will pay more so higher value property owners can pay less. And that is not something I'm willing to support or can justify. There is also a broader issue here. Many residents are already questioning value for money, roads, drainage, waste services. They are not asking for a redistribution of who pays more. They are asking for a better delivery and accountability. If we ignore that and proceed anyway, we risk confirming the view that council is out of touch with the people we represent. This proposal would be unfair, it is the wrong priority, and we are not what our community is asking for. This council should not be in the business of shifting costs downhill, and that's exactly what this would do. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak for or against? Councillor Tatchell, are you against, for or against?
I'm against. Thanks, Mr Mayor. It's interesting, I don't think they should have ever done away with wards, because we obviously serve different masters continually in this discussion. The frustration with municipal charges, differential rating, is that we've never come up with an actual solution where people in the rural sector, if you look at the percentages of how many people voted against it in terms of or spoke against it, it's probably in line with the amount of properties that are not rural. So there's only 412 farms left in Moorabool, and that's decreasing. And there's a reason for that. I was at a local business advisory committee last night, and there's only 2 people who live outside of the urban area of Bacchus Marsh. And part of the discussion was not about the municipal charge, was what they see as their future of Moorabool and what's important to Moorabool, and that was to try and hang on to its agricultural background, its heritage. And I'd like to call it putting the culture back into agriculture, because that's why we come here. People go to the seaside because they want to live near the beach. People come to rural areas because they're agricultural. That's how it works. I'm not saying the municipal charge fixes everything. I have seen, as Councillor Sullivan has, where people have had 100% rises on their properties. The paradox, of course, is that from a federal standpoint, rural properties or farm properties, from a capital gains point of view, they only take into consideration everything past the 5 acre mark. So they still consider the farm home to be the castle, and you know, we're in the people business, and those people live in those castles, and that's how the game's played. We continually, when we've had this discussion over the last 13 or 14 years, we keep coming back to that poorer people will have to pay more for their house in terms of the rates. But what we're not looking at is the bigger picture and saying, why don't we adjust the differential rate to balance that out and make sure that it's not just one lever here to push. It's one is to take the bounce out of it, and 2, then create a differential rate that protects those people. This is not a complex discussion. But whenever we bring this up, we simplify it to the lowest common denominator and basically come up with this, you know, where, of course, 75% of people are going to be against it because they live in the urban areas. That's just a fact of life. So I'm not surprised by that. What I am surprised by is the lack of understanding of how we can try and get this valuation system under control. There is not a person in local government that doesn't accept the fact that the valuation system, combined with the fair rate system, It's not a balance sheet. It doesn't have a balance sheet methodology. There's no explanation in what people owe, what they own. You could be a pensioner and live in a very nice home because of where you've, when you bought it and to where it's positioned. So they're not immune from it either. So all I'm saying is that under this current broken valuation system, we need to also consider we're in the people business and they should always come first. If there's 5 people in a farmhouse, 5 people in an urban place, we're all providing the same services. But unfortunately, we're one of the few countries in the world that actually taxes farmland. And inevitably, what it will do, it'll be the demise of our rural sector in the peri-urban. We've seen it in Melton, and it's like a plague. It will work its way up like a locust through Moorabool. So I now am a Moorabool councillor that doesn't have a ward, so I have a bigger master, so I have to agree with the 75%. But I'm damned if I'm going to agree to all this other rubbish, because we as councillors have that opportunity to be creative, to make sure that the unintended consequences of a municipal charge are dealt with the levers that we have, and we shouldn't be lazy about it. We should make the effort and build a package that actually facilitates for everybody so that we can actually look after everybody. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Tadgell. Anyone else would like to speak for or against? Councillor Berry, are you for or against?
I'm for, unfortunately. It's a really difficult one, and I think until the government comes up with a better way of valuation, as Councillor Tatchell was saying, I did have quite a few residents in Bacchus Marsh, that's where I live, so that they approached me. I think, unfortunately, the community engagement and consultation showed, a result that was against a municipal charge, and for tonight, I will be voting for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Berry. Any further people would like to speak for or against? Councillor Keogh,
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
are you for or against?
I'm speaking for the recommendation. Point number 1, it should be noted that the number of respondents that we received is extremely large compared to the number of replies that we normally get from our resident surveys. Point number 2, simple algebra shows that the lower the value of the property with an included municipal charge component will increase its final rates component. The community consultation, the majority of the residents do not support the introduction of a municipal charge at this time. And as such, I am voting for the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor.
Mr Mayor.
Councillor Keogh. Any further for or against? Councillor Ward, for you to close off.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and sorry I dropped out. My hotel Wi-Fi was working beautifully for 4 days and dropped out when I started speaking. Look, I've been listening to the comments that have been back online, and they're all accurate. But as Councillor Tatchell said, we are in the people business, and we've got to represent our community. Now, I note that if we don't bring in a municipal charge, 58% of our farm rates will get a decrease. 30% will get a will get an increase of less than 2.75%. So that means 88% of our farmers are either going to get a decrease or an increase of less than 2.75%. Now that, to me, means that under our fair go rating system, we're doing everything we can to support our farmers because we do have the 3rd lowest rate differential in the state, 0.78 of capital per value. So I think we've made it very clear that we are supporting our farmers, but at the same time, as one of my fellow councillors said, quite often we're not a socialist society. 60% of our income comes from rates, 70% of that comes from residential rates. Based on the feedback from those that have responded to the Facebook adverts, antenna, webpage banner, 3 editions of rural news, face-to-face interactions and meetings with members of communities and verbal inquiries, the consultation that's gone into this has been outstanding. And as I said earlier, 75% of our respondents have made very, very clear they're against the introduction of municipal levy. 30% wanted it, 12% was undecided. So when we need to consider the crisis, cost of living crisis we're in, and the fact that this proposed municipal levy would have had on low-value residential properties, pensions, retirees, and single-income households and first-home buyers, we have, in my view, we have to listen to the 75% that have made it very loud and clear that they're not supporting the municipal charge, Mr Mayor. So thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Councillor Ward. We have a mover and a seconder. All those in favour? Carried.
All those against?
All those against? Division? All those for? Councillor Berry, Councillor Bingham, Councillor Freeman, Councillor Ward, Councillor Keogh, Councillor Venditti Taylor. Against? Councillor Sullivan, Councillor Tatchell and Councillor Minari. (7.2) Bin purchase required for the rollout of mandatory green waste services beginning in 27-28. Any questions, councillors? Can I
have a question.
Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Last year at budget time, I've got to give some context to this. Last year at budget time, I suggested we could have had a 0% rate increase by using council reserves held by council. To which I was reliably informed that there are reserves that have cash and there are paper reserves. And the landfill rehabilitation reserve was one of these so-called paper reserves. Yet, it would seem now that paper reserve has materialised into a cash reserve. So my question is, how can that be?
I guess I'm answering. Through the chair, I wasn't aware this was a cash-backed reserve. I'm assuming what it is basically this is borrowing against that asset on the balance sheet to be repaid over 3 years. So it's not coming out of general revenue. I'm assuming that's what it is because as far as I'm aware, it's not cash-backed.
So it's not, sorry, so it's not cash reserve, yet miraculously, cash is there to be used, and yet last year I was informed couldn't be done. So I just make that statement.
Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I suppose my question is, and I suppose this is again with the Secretary, is this a statutory requirement placed upon all LGAs by the state government? And if that is the case, do we have any discretion in our decision on this?
Yeah. Mr Jeffries.
Through you, Mr Mayor, the FOGO rollout is a state government mandate, and we recently adopted a policy to roll it out in the urban areas only for council. I guess this report is how we pay for the rollout of the bins when they go next year.
Well, on that basis, Mr Mayor, and the fact that it is a mandated requirement of state government, I move the recommendation.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Berry.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I just have a question from Mr Jeffries. I've had an inquiry. Can you enlighten me, remind me, was Mount Wallace one of the towns as a compulsory.
Mr Jeffrey?
Through you, Mr Mayor, no, the only compulsory areas will be urban areas of Bacchus Marsh, Darley, Boland and Gordon.
Thank you.
Councillor Minari?
Thank you. My question is for officers, obviously. So it states in the paperwork on page 13, the reserve will be replenished over a 3-year period through waste service charges applied to residents. Is that every resident, or is that just the residents that receive the FOGO bin?
Mr Jeffries?
Through you, Mr Mayor, to be only the FOGO service.
Thank you.
Other questions? We have a mover. Do we have a seconder for the recommendation? Anyone to second that? Councillor Freeman? Any opposed? Councillor Sullivan? You're opposed?
Yes.
Yep. I get Councillor Waterkey to start the debate.
Mr Mayor, I'll keep it brief. This is a mandated requirement by the state government, and I support and endorse the recommendation on that basis. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sullivan?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I understand it's mandated by the state government. I'll accept that. My issue is how it's going to be funded. And that is what my issue relates to. As I touched upon in the question, which I think was a reasonable question earlier, it's because of that dot point 3 that I oppose this. And I think the landfill rehabilitation reserve was money set aside for a particular purpose. And now we actually find a situation where we're ratting it for something which was never intended for because, oh, well, the money's there, let's just use that. That's just not how we should be running our affairs. I think that's totally improper. If we talk about good governance and process, and yet we sort of say, oh, we'll just take the money out of that. That wasn't the purpose of it. That was not the purpose of the landfill levy. The landfill levy was set aside to rehabilitation of closed landfills across the Shire so that when these things do occur, they're usually quite lumpy and cost a lot of money, so we've got the money in reserve for that purpose. What happens in the short time if it's called upon, and we need that money for the Kerrs Road landfill or the one up at Darley there, the old landfills, or the one at Boland require a lot of money and expenditure. What happens then? So we're taking money out of something that was never intended for that purpose because it's convenient and easy. And I think that's not how we should be. We get up and repeatedly talk about good governance and good process. Yet at the first time, we snap it and, oh, we'll just take the money out of that. Is that how we run our affairs? It's disappointing. It's disappointing. At the very least, this and the recommendation to be referred to the audit committee to get their take on this, whether it's an appropriate mechanism to be using funds from this reserve to fund this other thing only because the money's there, and that's why we're doing it. And I vehemently think it's a poor outcome to just use money because the money's in the reserve. And yet 12 months ago we said it was only a paper reserve, and now it's going to be obviously miraculous, as I said before. Now there's going to be cash in that reserve. And that's just not how we should run business. What should happen is the money should be, the people who are gaining out of that should actually pay that money for the bids. The $65, whatever it is. Yeah, $65 total. $55 for the bin and $10 for the caddies. $65 should come out of those people who are using the service. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Freeman?
Ask a question first, please, of the CEO or whoever. Point 3, could you explain again for us the landfill rehabilitation reserve and how that monies will come back into the account, please?
CEO?
Through the chair, the land, as Councillor Sullivan has identified, has identified, the landfill, the rehabilitation levy is a fund that's has been set aside for old landfills of council that require works so that the hit doesn't come to council all at once. I think it would be a more accurate reflection to say that those funds are actually being drawn from general cash over a 3-year period and paid back into general cash.
The question, if you don't mind, well, actually two,
Councillor Freeman.
if you don't mind. So the monies will come back into that account?
The money that will be drawn down from general cash will be recovered, and then in 3 years' time, the cost of that service will be reduced because those bins would have been paid for over that time. It's either you pay for it all up front, or else you pay for it in instalments, basically. That's what
Thank
it's
you.
trying to achieve.
Yep, thank you. Just one more question. As it is mandated, what happens if we don't continue?
Through the chair, I suppose this is really around the bins. The service itself has to be we're mandated to deliver that service. This is really around the financing of the bins.
Right.
As in, do we pay how that is financed by the resident. That's what this is about, this report.
So we have to have the bins? Is that
You
the
have to have
bottom
the
line?
bins to deliver the service, correct?
Thank you.
Like to speak?
Look, thank you. I think I am for it, for this recommendation. By what I've just heard from the CEO, I'm quite comfortable
No worries.
agreeing to it. Thank you.
And anyone else want to speak for or against? You against? Councillor Minori?
Yes, I'm against. I've noticed over the last couple of weeks on social media the outpouring of anger around this. You know, there is many people in our shire that are very organised in terms of composting and utilising their waste. So, you know, they're the people that I have to answer to. And it reminds me of when we first got told about the glass purple bin and how it was so frustrating that for starters, local government is waste. That's what we do. That's our job. And to hear for the first time years ago around the glass purple bin was going to be forced upon us, it really didn't sit well with a lot of us. And now we're here again with the same thing. So I would love to see us push back on this. I really would, like a lot of councils are in terms of the glass bins. So I have listened to my residents and I will sit with them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Minori. Councillor Tatchell?
Yeah,
For or
thanks,
against?
thanks, Mr Mayor. Well, I'm against, but it's pity it's not the 60s. You'll not protest this. Honestly, this urban lens that's continually put over the diversity of our shire without any respect really concerns me, that decisions being made in Spring Street have a dramatic effect on people. And to consider that Belen is now considered urban goes against what the town's all about. But more importantly is that 428,000 belongs to the whole shire. And we're basically using it as a bank. It's the councillor's Visa card, if you like, for people for 3 years. And I don't agree with that. I think if people believe in what the state government's priority is with this, that they should pay the $65, buy a bin and go hard. But I think there'd be people out there that even though they're paying for the collection, wouldn't take the bin. And the example is very clear in Ballarat, where the bins have been just dumped everywhere and people just haven't picked them up because they do have their own composting, and people do this stuff without being thumbed down by a government that thinks it knows best for everybody. And I think our rural people really get jack of this, that they feel like they're left out in the cold, and they feel like decisions on this urban lens are continually affecting their lives. And now we want to use, what we call the cash, a cash reserve. It's cash. It's money from the shire, regardless of where it comes from. It's not free. To distribute it, I don't see an interest component to this. I don't see. So basically, even on today's cash rate, it does cost real money, so we don't get it all back. I didn't note in here that it's plus interest when it comes back, just that it comes back. I just think it's about time we really did start to push back where country people, rural people have been caught up in this peri-urban maze of not sure of our identity and I think it's become a real problem. I can see why people are upset about it. And I'm not just talking about people that live in farms, I'm talking about people that live in urban properties that say, we're not stupid. We know how to, we know what to put on our garden. We know how to deal with these issues. And the 2-to-1 vote out of Melbourne, we got 2 urban representatives for every country representative, is having a detrimental effect. And as I said earlier today, we pay 28%. And we get 13% back. But not only that, we have to deal with the mentality of an urban design that doesn't fit our culture. So, for my money, let's put the culture back into agriculture. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, councillor Tatchell. Councillor Kerr, are you for or against?
I am for the recommendation, Mr Mayor. I am voting for the recommendation for 2 reasons, and 2 reasons only. Number one, that this is a mandatory government requirement, and secondly, that the Landfill Rehabilitation Reserve Fund is going to be, the $428,000 is going to be recouped in 3 years. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, councillor Kerr. Anyone else wish to speak for or against? Councillor Ward, to close it off.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, I don't disagree with what Councillor Tatchell said. I think people want less government interference in their lives. We've seen our ability to make independent decisions reduce over the past decade. But what's happened over that decade is the state government has shifted about $2 billion in costs back to local government, and the pressures on us are increasing. The population growth, we can't change that, it's happened. The peri-urban growth, interface council growth, people are moving out into peri-urban councils, and we are a peri-urban council. So we have a high urban area, a large urban area with a high population, and we also have a regional rural area, and we've got to try and represent everyone and make decisions for that balance. I am happy that councils around the state are united on the glass bins, but the alternative, I've listened to the comments about the funding, the alternative is that we add the cost to the ratepayers, and in particular of those using the service, and I find that a bit disingenuous. 10 minutes ago we were just having a debate about enrolment in a municipal levy that would have impacted over 70% of our rate base, who would have been severely disadvantaged by that, to reduce the rate burden on a small percentage of our population. So that's not saying that those that receive a green bin may not use it, and they may compost and recycle and do that well. I know I do it in my house, we're very conscious of it, but I think it is mandated, and I think this is a responsible way of funding it without putting the impact back on our ratepayers. So on that basis, Mr Mayor, I'm happy to support the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Ward. We have a mover in councillor Ward and a seconder in councillor Freeman. All in favour? All against? All those in favour stand? It got carried. Yeah, all those in favour? Councillor Berry, councillor Freeman, councillor Venditti-Taylor, councillor Ward and councillor Kerr. All those against? Councillor Sullivan, councillor Tatchell, councillor Minari and councillor Bingham.
Mr Mayor, as I said earlier,
Yep.
could this matter also be referred to the Audit and Risk Committee for their comment, please? Because I'm not happy with the use of reserves for these purposes for which they were never intended.
CEO.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to have this item listed at the next audit committee.
Thank you. 7.3 is subsidised waste services. Councillors, are there any questions? We have a recommendation in front of us. Can I get someone to move that? Councillor Freeman. Can I have a seconder? Anyone to second that? Councillor Ward. Do we have anyone opposed? Councillor Sullivan. Councillor Freeman, I'll get you to...
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm pleased to move this recommendation, which follows the original motion I brought forward and the rescission subsequently carried by council. What we have before us tonight is a practical and responsible next step in a process that ensures these proposed subsidised waste services are properly tested through the 2026-27 draft budget and, importantly, through community consultation. At its core, this proposal responds to a very real issue in our community: access to affordable and safe waste disposable options. When those options are limited, the impacts don't disappear, they shift. We see increased illegal dumping, unsafe storage of materials on private property, roadside dumping, and avoidable environmental and safety risks. These are not abstract concerns. They are occurring in our municipality. The proposal before us is targeted, capped, and designed to be tested, not permanently locked in at this stage. It includes subsidised hard waste drop-off allocations for our households, being 2 by 1 square metre, a free green waste drop-off period, a 50% subsidy for mattress disposal during a set period, and a targeted curbside collection service for elderly and unable residents, capped at 500 properties annually. Importantly, this is not a blanket expansion of services. It is a structured, time-bound set of measures designed to test demand and community value. It is also financially transparent. The costs are clearly identified and will be incorporated into the draft budget so the community can see the full impact and provide informed feedback before council makes any final decision. That point is critical. We are not deciding tonight to implement these services. We are deciding to properly expose them to community consultation with full costings so council can make a genuinely informed decision later in the budget process. I also want to highlight the targeted curbside service. For older residents and those unable to transport waste, access to transfer stations is not always practical. Without support, they are left with limited options. This element of the proposal is about equity and practicality, ensuring those residents are not excluded from basic waste services. This approach aligns directly with our council plan, particularly our commitment to listen, understand, and respond to community needs. We have heard that demand clearly, and this process allows us to test it properly, responsibly, and transparently. It also ensures we maintain financial discipline while still being responsive to lived community issues. On that basis, I commend the recommendation to council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Freeman. Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I guess councillors and everybody in attendance, I think we've got to ask ourselves one question. Who's going to pay for this? Who is going to pay for it? Because one thing I know in life, you get nothing for nothing. Nothing for nothing. And the arguments that have been put up that are also attached in the our budget, in the agenda, which refer to illegal dumping, etc., etc. Illegal dumping has been assessed before. And what we found is most of the illegal dumping in the Shire comes from outside the Shire. It's not our residents, it's residents from elsewhere that are dumping their stuff here. So I think that furphy should be put to bed once and for all. That's not the case. And I think here we go. Earlier on we talked about equity and fairness and loading up people with extra charges. So everyone in the Shire, every ratepayer and TANMED in this Shire will be expected to pay $25 extra on top of what they already pay in charges to fund this, when in fact they may not even use the service. Is that fair? Is that fair? We talked earlier on item 7.1 about equity and fairness. Equity and fairness, and yet 2 items later we're using the same argument in reverse. This is not equitable, it's not fair. I understand people might be... So basically what we're going to do is we're going to load up everyone else, Ross Shire, every ratepayer in tenement with $25 extra, so the long-suffering ratepayer in this shire is going to be loaded up for the largesse of council. For the largesse of council. So fundamentally they're going to pay for that when in fact they may not actually even use it. And I know they'll say, oh, yep, they can use it, but that's not the point. We are, and I know this is going into a budget process, that's what it says, but then why did we not use the municipal charges feed into the budget process as well? Why did we have a separate process survey on that? Why don't we have a separate survey on this to see what the community's feeling is about it? Why do we actually have to sort of slip it under the guard into the budget process, which is not fair and not reasonable? So I think we've either got to decide which way we go with these things. This should actually have been the case. This should go out for community consultation to see what people's thoughts on it are, rather than try to slip it under the budget. Because the officers will, if this goes ahead, the officers will do work based on this into the budget process, spending up a lot of time and effort in following this up to put it out to the people. And I don't think that, so why don't we have a set, why doesn't this go out for community consultation? Could someone ask me why? Because I would say it should. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm happy to second this. I note that this was an issue going back 5 years ago. Some of my council colleagues at the time who are no longer on council very passionate in supporting this. And I know Councillor Berry in particular did some fantastic work to try and get an extension to the green waste trial, which is important to those to reduce bushfire risk. So I think in terms of the illegal dumping, yes, some illegal dumping comes from outside the Shire. We know that, but I haven't seen evidence that it's all from outside the Shire. Councillor Sullivan spoke about dismissing that argument. I don't think we can, because I haven't seen, I apologise if there is evidence, because I haven't seen any evidence that it all comes from outside the Shire. I don't think we should be saying we're loading up this for the benefit of largesse for council. This is not we're not Moorabool Shire councillors who are representing wards anymore. We're representing Moorabool Shire Council, and I don't think this should be painted as a east-west versus argument. The community feeling to me has come through loud and clear. When we discontinued the trial, there was absolute outrage and the feedback and the criticism coming towards council. I know my phone ran hot, my emails ran hot, and the comments on social media were quite damning. And there is an opportunity to highlight this as part of the budget process and seek further feedback from the communities in consultation of the budgets. So I think we can ask the community how they feel about this when we go to the draft budget. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ward. Any further councillors? Councillor Minari? Against or for? Against?
Yes, against. We did a trial on this. It wasn't great. I remember hearing from one resident that he went 15 times in 1 month to drop off green waste. So that calculation in the scheme of things would have been a bit topsy-turvy. But look, I want to find a solution to this. I desperately want to. But when people have to pay for it that aren't going to use any of these services, it's just not fair, and I can't just allow that. So also, the trial was the community consultation. That's how I feel. I don't understand why we need to do another community consultation, because the figures of the trial were in paper and it was delivered to us. So I just don't think this is the answer. Thank you.
Councillor Minari. Councillor Berry?
I'm against this tonight, unfortunately. My concern, listening to other councillors, but I had written down a few points because people had spoken to me in the community. So my concern, as it is, I think it needs a little bit more work, but some ratepayers prop up others. Not listening to Councillor Sullivan, it's not some. Actually, when I looked at a whole lot of figures, low waste households rarely go to the tips, so they wouldn't be getting the virtually $0 to $50 benefit. Average households do 2 to 4 visits a year, their annual benefit would be $80 to $200, and a high-use household trailer loads to tip large cleanups, $300 to $800 annual benefit. So I think overall, looking at what we have here as a recommendation is a little bit too much. And I think the percentage of people who would be paying for that fee, and $25 is a lot of money in some people's households if they're not getting anything for the service and paying for other people's garbage. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Berry. Councillor Bingham, are you for or against?
For the recommendation, Mr Mayor. So I just wanted to be clear that tonight is not about adopting this service. It's about resolving to include it in the draft budget, and in turn, the community has ample opportunity to respond to that as it goes out to consultation. So if there is an uproar, then that's I'll vote on that accordingly. But at the moment, I'd love to see this go into the draft budget so the community gets their say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bingham. Councillor Kerr,
Thank you,
for
Mr.
or against?
I'm for the recommendation, purely because this is only just a referral to our budget, exactly as Councillor Bingham has said, and we've still got time to be able to refer it to the community for consultation. And also when the draft budget goes out, it's also community consultation. So the decision can then be made. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Kerr. Councillor Tatchell, you for
Yeah,
or
thanks,
against?
Mr. Mayor.
Against?
I'm kids. I mean, 500 houses, what are you going to do? It's about, there's an estimate. I mean, part of the debate tonight was that we know exactly what it is, the cost, but the thing I'm reading in front of me says estimates. That doesn't give me any confidence that it's real. It's about, there's probably about 400 grand tied up in that for about 500 houses to put to a budget at a time when we're already looking at core business to say, how do we get through the next period of time? It's interesting that a lot of the argument tonight has been rural and residential, and yet part of the argument was that we work for the whole Shire. Well, I don't think I've heard that tonight. I'm not quite sure if that's how it's gone. And based on the when we've stood up to say this is what we represent, maybe we haven't. Maybe we need to look at it from a different perspective. But ultimately, this is a folly. We tried it once before, and the take-up on it, I think, was around 18-19%. That was the take-up. So what we did was made a hell of a mess of our streets. But I can tell you, the places that have taken it on, and I've seen them, you want to go there when they're starting to dump rubbish, because what happens is people from out of town, visitors all come along and say, well, just chuck a fridge on someone's nature strip, it'll be okay. Or we'll do this, or we'll do that. And you drive through the town and they're cleaning this up forever. So I think when we talk about estimates, I think you'll be very surprised at how much this will escalate when people see this as a free rubbish delivery for anybody and anyone that wants to. You might even have country people that might say, well, I'm paying for it, I may as well go and chuck my fridge freezer down in the street and to see how it looks on Hallett's Way, as we pop one in the middle of the roundabout there, see how that looks. I mean, seriously, we've got to get back to some sort of core business. We've got to have a real understanding of what the Shire is. We have 64 towns and hamlets. 64. But I wonder how many of them are represented in any of these reports tonight. I wonder if, of those 64, how many actually got to say, got to run tonight to say, how we go here in the bush. All we've found tonight is we're going to be starting to subsidise. That's my favourite word. If you ever look through this report tonight, we see subsidy a little bit. It's time we stop subsidising, recognise who we are as a Shire, understand that this might work in Glenroy where there's houses everywhere and they could make it pay. But when you start running trucks around the Shire to do this sort of rubbish, I guarantee we'll have exactly the same take-up. Once the novelty wears off and everyone cleans out their garage, we'll get back to that 18%. We'll have a very big bill every time we go to do waste. So No, I'm not for this. In fact, I'm probably insulted by it, but I was the guy that rescinded it, so, but maybe I need to loosen up a bit. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, councillor Tatchell. Closing, councillor Freeman.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Actually, part of my closing words are, I work for the whole Shire, not just, I'd already written it down. I am a councillor for the whole Shire, and I have listened to the residents from here right up to the top. I had one aged gentleman ring me from Balan, most upset that we didn't have the collection. He couldn't get rid of all of his green waste. And he said, I said, well, it will be subsidised. You would still have to there would be a payment on your rates. And he was quite comfortable with that. And I have listened to other residents right across the Shire, and I'm not talking about just up there, down here. I have never worked in wards. This is my first time on council. I work for the whole Shire. And as has been said, it is just going into the budget. It will go out for community consultation, and I think we should listen to it. And getting back to core business, which is roads, rates and rubbish. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Freeman. We have a mover in councillor Freeman, a seconder in councillor Ward. All those in favour? Councillor Kerr, are you in favour?
I'm in favour of the recommendation.
All those in favour? All those against? Carried.
Division.
All those for? Councillor Keogh, councillor Bingham, councillor Freeman, councillor Venditti Taylor and councillor Ward. All those against? Councillor Sullivan, councillor Tatchell, councillor Minari and councillor Berry. Thank you. Moving along, urgent business. Councillor Sullivan, any urgent business?
No urgent business, as long as that item 3.7.2 goes to the Audit and Risk Committee. I'll be watching that intently. Thank you.
Chair, councillor Berry and councillor Patchell.
Yeah, I know that, but I just want to make sure it's listed.
Councillor Kerr, any urgent business?
No urgent business, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Tatchell, any urgent business?
No, nothing from me, Mr Mayor. I'm planning a protest. I don't need to.
Councillor Minari, any urgent business?
No urgent business, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ward, any urgent business?
No urgent business, Mr Mayor, thank you. I look forward to be back in the chambers in a couple of weeks.
See you shortly. Councillor Berry, any urgent business?
No urgent business, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bingham, any urgent business?
Business front, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Freeman, any
No
urgent business?
urgent business, thank you.
Thank you. Next meeting will be the 6th of May ordinary meeting of council. Declare this meeting closed. Thank you.